Joining me in the studio tonight is Alba party leader and former First Minister of Scotland, the one and only Mr Alex Salmond. Alex, welcome, and good to see you.
I'll just tell you the Marcus Rashford thing. I mean, when George Best used to go from Belfast to Manchester to go to the nightclubs, Rashford's doing it in reverse.
Yes, he is. Yeah, he's got a mate, apparently, who plays for some team in Northern Ireland. He's obviously just discovered the delights of Belfast. But,
the thing about George Best is that after a full night at the nightclub, he used to roll up to training, couldn't train a stick, and then came out in a match day and scored 5 goals.
Yes, I mean, that was his thing. It was an incredible situation. Now, we want you to talk us through, because I was in Scotland, I believe, when the smoking ban first came in, and I was very irked by it, because I was obviously older than 16, and I wasn't there when you were First Minister, but... I
got you out of the country before I took office.
You did do that, yeah, chased me. But I do remember standing outside many sort of bars and restaurants in Glasgow in howling gales, smoking and cursing Jack McConnell, the First Minister of Scotland, who had done it. But tell us about your 16-year-old.
Well, I'm going to say a number of things that you wouldn't hear me say very often, but here's one of them. Jack McConnell was right.
Yes.
And I thought the smoking ban in public places was correct. He was correct to implement it, and many other countries followed suit. And people who can now go into bars and restaurants and enjoy some clean air, they think the same thing. As far as the 16-year-olds, yeah, I mean, companies do intervene to try and push public health in the right direction. You know, it's not an either-or, Mike, between doing something about knife crime. Or more accurately, Kenny McCaskill, the Justice Secretary, reduced knife crime in Scotland by 75% in 3 years, as well as doing something about smoking among 16-year-olds. So it's not an either-or thing.
Well, I'm not suggesting it's an either-or.
The knife crime thing really annoys me, because there is a route forward that we followed in Scotland. Unfortunately, it hasn't been totally pursued in Scotland, and the figures have gone back up a bit. But there's a way to deal with knife crime, right? And I mean, OK, it doesn't deal with the underlying problems in society and all the rest of it, but actually stops people getting killed. And that's you have to do a combination of stop and search over everyone at the weekends under the age of perhaps 25, without fear or favour, every single person. And if people know they're going to get stopped and searched, then they won't carry knives.
But you know the difference, though.
Let me finish this, Mike, because this is a big thing.
All right.
You have to treat it not just as a criminal thing, but also as a public health thing. And you have to bring into the communities which are ridden with knife crime, you've got to bring the victims of knife crime, the families of those who've died, and the people who wasted their lives by carrying knives and being caught, and bring them to tell the youngsters of today just what a waste it is. And if you do that combination, not one or the other, but both, then you will reduce knife crime very significantly. And the fact that politicians don't do it is just moral cowardice.
Here's what I would say to you. I mean, and people mention the Glasgow sort of model often, don't they, and say that they've actually proven that it can be done. But there's one classic kind of, I suppose, missing element of the crime involving knives in Glasgow and in most of Scotland, and that's race. Because the problem with stop and search in England is that the people who generally object to it are the people who are representative, shall we say, of the black community.
Well, sure,
well, it's just going to be racial profiling.
That's where moral courage comes in.
But you didn't have to do that in Scotland.
But in Scotland there was plenty of moans and whines and groans.
There would have been, yeah.
There was a guy who led the Liberal Democrats when they were still in existence in the Parliament, who used to whine every week about, some 15-year-old had been stopped and searched.
Yes.
And with no kind of understanding that because of that process of being able to do, if every single person under the age, but it is age profiling, under the age of, say, 25, is stopped and searched on a Friday and Saturday night, then there is no racial profiling, because every single person under a certain age will be stopped and searched. And knowing it's going to happen is what stops people carrying knives.
But I don't think it's practical in London, for example.
Yes, it is practical.
Everybody under the age of 25 who's going out to see if they've got a knife. Because there's not police, for a start. And even if you wanted to do it, how long do you think it would take?
Right, OK, you think you use up less police by dealing with the consequences of knife crime, dealing with the pain and the disaster for families, and there've been one victim of knife crime. The consequences don't just fall on them or the family, it falls on hundreds of people. And actually stopping it, yes, of course, it requires a concentrated effort, But if you do it, people will soon see the results of it and they'll get behind it,
Yeah,
including the people who suffer most, which incidentally is young black kids in London's most deprived communities.
Absolutely right. But it is a more complex issue in London than it is in Glasgow.
Well,
and I think you would admit that. And I think everybody knows that it's a much bigger problem
well, let's put it this way, Mike. I mean, nothing had happened for many years before in Scotland until we did it. And I have to say, it slipped back a bit in Scotland because you got people saying, oh, there shouldn't be a universal stop and search, oh, the civil liberties, blah, blah, blah. There's nothing more endangers civil liberties than losing your life.
Yes.
And that's the hard fact and the reality. And sometimes it takes, and I just can't understand, given the last 5-6 years, where knife crime has escalated out of control in many of England's cities, why there hasn't been the determination to do something decisive.
Well, look at what I was just talking about there about lawless Britain in terms of it's not just knife crime. There is a sort of view abroad, if you like, that the country has kind of lost the plot. We haven't seen football violence like we saw at West Bromwich Albion and Wolverhampton Wanderers at the weekend for quite some time. Quite a few years now.
That's the biggest crowd they've had for some time.
Well, yeah, very much so. But I mean, people who go to football will say, "Oh, well, it's never really gone away." We saw what happened at the England final in the Euros. All those people high on cocaine got their way through past security and got into the grounds. Yes, but it's not been as bad as that particular incident was. We've also seen, partly because maybe more things are now filmed, but people fighting in the street now is a common occurrence. There was one just down in Bournemouth, which, as far as I knew, was a sort of sleepy place where you went for a Conservative Party conference and bought a house in Sandbanks if you were lucky enough to make enough money. They're fighting outside a college in a street, sort of running battles where 5 or 6 people were taken to hospital, 20-odd people were arrested. This was just one afternoon last week,
I'm sure that you get cycles of things. I don't think, from my observation, I don't go to many English football matches, but from my observation, there's less lawlessness at football matches in England now than there was in the 1980s.
Yes, I would say that's true. But it's coming back, though,
well, then perhaps they should do something about it before they get to the top of
Well, do you know they are? Because you'll be delighted to know, I can bring you this as a piece of interesting breaking news. The Premier League have given the police in England millions and millions of pounds as a gift. Now, you'll know all about the niceties of dealing with public bodies and whether they can accept money. Apparently, there is a way you can give a gift to the police.
Well, that's good, because...
and they're going to give that gift in order to have the police protect the top Premier League matches from trouble, because the police were starting to say, do you know what? We don't really fancy doing this. So they're now paying them to do it.
Good.
So now you can buy the police.
Yeah, well, OK, Mike, but, I mean, given the zillions of finance that are in the Premier League, and given the relatively paltry sums in the police budgets, to me that's a good distribution.
Well, how about they give them another bunch of money to actually fight knife crime? Maybe that would be the answer.
Well, I think you'll need 2 things there. You'll need a police force willing to do it, and you'll need politicians willing to instruct.
Well, apparently they're willing to police football matches for money. So what else will they do?
Well,
that would be my question.
You could do it on a payment by results.
Exactly right. Now, talk to me about fasting, because Rishi Sunak, also in the news today, in addition to the vaping scenario, he's also, he's bringing in rules that are not necessary for things that already have rules.
I told you Jack McConnell was right. I'm now going to say Rishi Sunak is an inspiration to me. And not many people say that. But
nobody would have expected that from you.
When I saw that interview, I thought to myself, right, I've started the fasting diet.
The fasting diet? How's that going?
Day 1 today.
OK.
It's good. All right so far.
Are you hungry?
Yeah, yes. I've been looking around for anything to steal.
I've got nothing here for you.
But, I saw that interview and I thought, this guy is really on the ball now, because when he said he was addicted to Mexican Coke,
yes,
I thought to myself, this whole boring image is being shattered. And then, because I found out...
He said that before, hasn't he?
He found out he's talking about a sweet cola drink, as opposed to the more interesting... Michael Gove, I'm sure is addicted to Mexican Coke as well.
He may well be.
And goes to nightclubs to demonstrate.
In Aberdeen.
But I'm sure that's just a drink as well, absolutely.
I'm sure it is, absolutely right. But, the whole point about Rishi Sunak is that he's always tried to kind of inspire this kind of cult of personality, when I'm afraid he just doesn't really have one.
Yeah, well, you need to have a personality first.
This is the trouble.
But, I was struck by, the attack from his... I'm trying to remember, his predecessor. Yes, his immediate predecessor.
Liz Truss.
Liz Truss. Who said...
Well, Liz Truss is very much of a proper conservative, isn't she?
No, but you say that, but that's a proper American conservative. An American conservative believes in libertarianism, no regulation, no rules, etc., etc. traditional English Conservatives believe in lots of rules. They believe in the Church of England, the House of Lords. They believe in static society. Then
Well, American Conservatives believe in the capital. They believe in the House of Representatives.
I'm just saying that
the
English
Senate.
Conservatives historically have had many, many rules bearing down on the working classes. That was the difference between your traditional English Conservative and your freewheeling and American Conservative. And I'm not saying that Liz Truss, should be regarded as the great authority on Conservative ideology, but she seems to be referring to American conservatism.
Well,
as
I
opposed to
think you may have a point there, but nevertheless, she does speak for a lot of people in this country when it comes to not so much regulation, but certainly more conservative policies that this government is failing.
If only somebody like Liz Truss could become Prime Minister and show us how...
And not have the rug pulled from under her, it'd be fair. Don't worry, though, because this week she's relaunching herself as Popcon.
She could come back.
As Popcon. Have you heard about this? This is a new organisation.
No, this is news to me.
This is a new organisation which is going to bring put the C back in conservatism. That's my word, not theirs. That's not their slogan, by the way. But one of the people that was about to speak at the launch of it was, of course, Simon Clarke. And when Simon Clarke last week ordered everybody to get a new Prime Minister and ordered Rishi Sunak to step down, she immediately threw him under the bus.
Did she pull the rug from Simon
She
Clarke?
did. She did, strangely enough. But let's talk about Scotland. We mentioned Michael Gove. The COVID inquiry has been going on up there. The WhatsApp messages of Nicola Sturgeon have mysteriously disappeared. We spoke about this last week on Burns Night. But today, we're hearing more and more about how the SNP government really hasn't lived up to what it was hoped to be, shall we say, in that period.
Michael Gove, without with just water to drink today, was saying how dreadful it was that the SNP government were doing politics while he and his colleagues were tackling COVID. If only that were true. I mean, I came across a book which Michael was one of the authors of. It published in October 21, Strengthen the Union, Tories and Their Essays. I mean, a bestseller, obviously.
Of course.
As Michael said, and just as we tackled COVID-19 with a UK-wide approach, so we should work together to build back together. What a ringing phrase that was. Look, they were all at it.
Yes.
The idea that politicians should drop politics just because there's a national emergency is for the birds. And the idea that one set of politicians were doing it, another set weren't, is equally ridiculous. You know, Michael Gove said, well, how shall I describe it? He's a hypocrite, right? So that's one. The real issue that matters to the bereaved relatives, they want to know things like, and they're not really getting too much of this as yet, but hopefully the inquiry will come on to it. You know, it's why did people get released from hospitals to care homes carrying COVID with apparently no real checks or awareness of what was happening? That's the real kind of issues.
But
In terms of the WhatsApps, then I think the people who deleted the WhatsApps, including the Prime Minister, current and past, Boris Johnson and the current Prime Minister, and Nicola Sturgeon and the others should be in real trouble.
Yes.
Nicola's big problem, I suspect, is that press conference that's been shown from August 2021, where Kieran Jenkins of Channel 4 challenged her on this one. And she said, of course, we'll keep all the information, including WhatsApp, and then lectured them on what public inquiries do. So anything that was deleted in the full knowledge that it should be retained for the purposes of a public inquiry, and not to have it done strikes me as real trouble.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And also it's clear that Nicola Sturgeon and the SNP did, because they said they wanted to, use COVID as a way of pushing independence. But let me move you on.
As the UK government were using COVID as a way of pushing the union.
Well,
I mean, you know...
Well, they don't have to push the union. The union's already in existence.
No, come on, it's a plague in all their houses.
Not at all. I'm not having that. But what I will ask you to do... What I will ask you to do... I am a unionist, of course, because I was born in London and my parents are from Scotland. I wish the United Kingdom to be united.
They will agree to disagree.
We will. But before you go, because of your great experience in these matters, could you tell us what's happened tonight in the House of Lords? Because we can't quite work it out.
You and I were on a show called The Eyes Have It.
We were.
The Edinburgh Festival. We should have called it The Contents.
The Contents. It's a good twist.
Well, the Lords, as far as I can divine, voted that they were not content with an amendment to stop the bill.
Right.
So it was like a double negative.
Yes.
Which means that the bill is through and gone back to the Commons, and no doubt we'll start a series of ping-pong debates.
Right. So, okay, back to the Commons, where now Rishi Sunak could be undermined by his own MPs.
Well, yeah, well,
he much prefers that.
Which branch of the Conservative Party are going to undermine me next?
He much prefers that. Alex, great to see you again.
A pleasure.
Thank you very much indeed.